What's up guys, thank you for joining me. I'm your host Sam and I finally came up with a name for this tutorial series that I've been doing. We're going to call it Sam's Camera Tutorials. I know, the name could use some work, but today's tutorial is going to be how to get better shots out of your gimbal or your camera stabilizer. Some of it might apply to handheld, but I don't ever use handheld personally, and we're going to start out with 5 essential shots that I use every single time I pick up my gimbal. So you guys ready? Let's get to it. You can move a camera in a lot of different ways in three-dimensional space, and I don't want this to get confusing, so I'm going to put this diagram up on the screen so that you guys know exactly what I'm talking about as I'm talking about it. First up, we have our orbit shot, or our semicircle, and this is probably the shot that I use the most. It's kind of like my bread and butter. And the reason for this is because it's an extremely easy shot to accomplish, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to look great. The orbit shot or the semicircle has a lot of different variations. You can go the whole 360 degrees around your point of focus, or you can just do a semicircle. The whole trick to this shot is to truck your camera left or right and to pan it at the same rate in the opposite direction. If you get your timing right, this will keep the object in the same spot on the screen as you move around it. Other than that, the orbit shot is an extremely easy shot to accomplish, and I wish I had learned it a lot sooner. Next up on our list is the vertical orbit, and that's just what I call it. I'm sure there's some sort of technical name for this, but I just call it the vertical orbit because it's the exact same shot, but you're going up and down instead of left and right. And obviously it goes without saying, this one you can't do the full 360 degrees unless you're going under and over the object somehow. But anyway, for this shot, just take all the advice I gave you for the normal orbit shot and make it vertical. You're just moving up or down with your camera and tilting at the same time to stay locked to whatever you're filming. One of the ways that I really like to modify this shot is to start above the object and then dolly back as I'm tilting past it. Other than that, pretty much everything I said about the horizontal orbit applies to the vertical orbit. They're kind of like sister shots and they go hand in hand. Another thing that both orbit shots are great for is transitions, because you can swing past objects really easily and use those objects as seams for your transitions. On to our next shot. I call this one the pull away tilt, and it's basically just dollying out as you're lifting the camera up and tilting down at the object at the same time. And that sounds really complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. All we're doing to get this shot is walking backwards slowly while we lift the camera up and tilt the nose down with the joystick. And what this accomplishes is kind of like that flyaway shot that you would see in a drone video. And I also wanted to mention that this shot and all the shots on this list, you can also do them in reverse as you're shooting so that you have more to work with when you sit down to edit at the end of the day. But anyway, on to shot 4, the swing up. I call this one the swing up because you're basically just dollying forward or backwards and swinging the camera up from the ground or down from the sky. The whole idea behind this shot is basically revealing where we're walking or where we are in our story or transitioning to the next setting. And other than that, accomplishing this shot is ridiculously easy. You're just walking forward or backwards and you're tilting the camera up or down. I don't think I have to go much further with this shot. You guys get the picture. It's good for reveals and it's good for transitions. I'm just going to show you what this motion looks like because I'm not even going to try to explain it. It's just too much to actually try to explain what I'm doing here. But basically, you're just holding the camera out at the end of your arm and swinging it over while tracking. It's like the orbit shot, but
it should
on
be
its
really
side,
easy to do this.
kind of.
It's just the FPV
I don't
rainbow.
really know.
It should be really easy.
I don't know how to go about
done.
explaining this. It's got to
can't
go
do this.
through
We can do this.
the point of
Gimbal-
focus. No,
it has
it
to
goes
go
over
through.
the
It has
point
to
of
go
focus in
through
a
the
rainbow
pan
motion,
focus.
and you're
I
just
don't know
you're swinging over,
why it do
and
this.
it's
Through.
supposed to look cool,
Really
but
good.
it's hard to stop.
It has to go through. The point of focus. I'm so gotta go. I'm so gotta
If you haven't gathered it yet, I'm just not all that great at FPV shots. I think it's a very useful tool to have in your bag, and I like a lot of the FPV shots that I see. I think a lot of them are amazing, especially the FPV drone, but that's a whole different can of worms. First of all, I like vortex mode a lot better. It's just easier to control your gimbal in that way than it is to control it with the following motion in FPV, in my opinion. The other reason I don't like FPV mode is there's a lot more margin for error in FPV shots because you're literally, like, the gimbal will do whatever your hands are doing. So I just wanted to explain FPV mode for people that don't understand how it works. The gimbal mimics whatever your hands do, and it just does its best to keep it steady in that capacity. So anyway, now that we've gone over the shots that I wanted to show you guys and teach you, I want to talk about what gimbal I'm using currently. This is the DJI RSC2, and it's the second gimbal that I've ever owned. It replaced the Weebill S as my main gimbal, and I use my gimbal constantly. That's why I wanted to make this video, because I use it so much that I figured I'd put some of that knowledge out there for other people to use. But if you're a beginner, a $500 price tag for your first gimbal might be insanely steep to some people. I know that it would have been for me when I bought my first camera. It's still a lot of money. Like, if that thing broke, I'd probably be pretty bummed. And this is why I wanted to bring up my first gimbal, the Zhiyun Weebill S. This thing is still perfect, and I've had it for 2 years, and I've probably used it hundreds of times. Like, I use this thing all the time still, even though I own that one, because it's that good. I'm selling mine right now for $200 on Facebook Marketplace, so you can find them for under $200 used, and they won't have much wrong with them. The only thing wrong with mine is the arm locks are broken, but that doesn't affect functionality whatsoever. So my point here is, if you're a beginner and you're unsure about what your first gimbal should be, maybe buy a cheaper or a used one and find out if you even like gimbal shooting in the first place. It just so happened that I really enjoy gimbal shooting, and I happened to get a really nice gimbal right off the bat for not a lot of money, but not everybody's so lucky. You might spend a whole lot of money on a gimbal and find out that you prefer shooting on a tripod, and that would really suck. While we're on that subject, don't listen to these YouTubers that have 10 million followers that are telling you, like, you have to buy the nicest one, like, buy it nice or buy it twice. Like, it's BS. Everything sucks nowadays. Phones break in a year, good stuff breaks in a year, crappy stuff breaks in a year. It's just buy what you can afford and you're comfortable with spending the money on. Like, you don't need a full set of G Master lenses to be a good photographer or video maker. Anyway, I've rambled on about the prices of gear and all that stuff for long enough, and I want to show you guys some, like, open-ended tips that I have for getting better shots out of your gimbal, but I can't really do that here, so let's go to the living room. Fooled you, we're still in the room. I just spent the last 3 hours trying to fix this ProMaster tripod, and the leg is still broken, so that's going back to the store. Don't buy ProMaster stuff, by the way. This is my 3 pro tips for getting the best shots out of your gimbal, and we're gonna start out with arguably the most important part of using your gimbal, and that is balancing your gimbal. Balancing your gimbal is important for a couple reasons. The first of which is, the better your gimbal is balanced, the more smooth your shots will be. And this also has to do with motor parameters and some of your settings in your gimbal, but overall I've found that keeping your gimbal well balanced and being as precise as you can when you balance your gimbal will yield good results no matter what your settings are. While we're on the subject of balancing your gimbal, a well-balanced gimbal that is off will just allow you to move the camera in any position and it won't move no matter what. The camera's already just gonna stay wherever it needs to be, and the motors just need to make very minor adjustments to whatever movements you're making. So I just wanted to show you guys that. Tip number 2 is going to be, consider the weight of your entire gimbal rig. I didn't do that when I first started out, and I bought every accessory I possibly could, and I ended up making a rig that was so heavy that I didn't even really want to use it, so I got rid of a bunch of my accessories. Some people like a really heavy gimbal rig, some people like a really light rig. I fall somewhere in the middle because I feel like the more weight that you have, the more smooth it is, the more balanced it is, the harder it is to get micro jitters, but I also understand that having a lighter rig means that you can manipulate the gimbal in different ways. It's easier to carry around, it's easier on your back, so it is something to consider when you start out, and it's something that I wish that I had considered when I started out. Pro tip number 3 and our final tip of the day is going to be, move with your legs and not your arms when you're handling your gimbal. When I first started out, I did this a lot, like kind of out at arm's length, and after a while it would get jittery because my arms are tired. But if you have the gimbal in like this, shoulders back, good posture, all that stuff, it's way smoother to move around with your hips and your legs than it is to try to do this stuff with your arms. I don't know why. I don't make the rules. It is what it is. I do know why. It's because you're taking more joints out of the equation. More joints mean more fatigue and more spots to get jittery. Here, you're just, you know, it's all in the hips. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun making this video. If you could, go down and hit the like button. It means the world to small content creators like me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.